Now, there is talk about the Europeans getting prepared for a war with the Russians. There was an article published on this on RT today. Very interesting article, I will say. Very interesting article published on Russian television. Now, let's read RT before they completely ban RT. Now, people say, oh, it's Russian propaganda and all this shit, but I've seen a lot of stuff published in RT that's legit. I've seen a lot of good articles published in RT that are very revealing, and they like to talk about things that are not widely covered or commonly covered, but they can switch. I mean, switching, I mean, yeah, it wouldn't be surprising. Listen, like I said, truth is stranger than fiction. So let's get into this article here. Moscow accuses EU states leaders of whipping up psychosis, war psychosis. Very interesting article. Let's get into it here, okay? So we're just going to read the highlighted areas. It's not a very long article. The Finnish authorities, we're getting into Finland. Now, Finland is a very interesting country because during Operation Barbarossa, who joined the Germans in invading the Soviet Union? The Finns did. The Finns joined. So you had the Finns, you had the Germans, they were allies, they joined forces, they invaded the Soviet Union. So the Finns and the Russians, they got a history. Now you can say, well, the Soviet Union also invaded Finland before that, and that is true. That is true. So there is a history of violence between these two countries, a history of warfare and invasions, and the Russians invaded Finland, and later on the Finns joined the Germans, and they, together with the Germans, invaded Russia, and they butchered a ton of Russians. I mean, it gets very nasty. The Finns and the Russians, they have a long history of violence between each other. So it goes on to say the Finnish authorities have been churning up the atmosphere, an atmosphere of war psychosis, and urging people to prepare for a possible war with Russia. This is a very real reality. It's not just happening in Finland. This is happening in Sweden. This is happening in Norway. This is happening in Latvia. You see this sort of thing. Poland is getting really big on this, or has been really getting big on this whole idea. So it says here that the Russians are saying that the Finns are entrenching themselves into war psychosis and urging people to prepare for a possible war with Russia, according to Moscow's ambassador to the EU country, Pavel Kuznetsov. In an interview with RIA Novosti, published on Thursday, Kuznetsov said that Finland's leadership is instilling fear in the population using claims of Russia's aggressive plans. Now, it's very interesting. We'll get back to this article here, but I want to point out, Grigoris Balakian, in his memoirs, talks about this. He was in Germany when the Germans declared war on Russia in World War I. You know what he says? He says the Germans were stirring the people up. The German government was stirring the people up, saying that the Russians were going to invade Germany. It's just like today. The Russians are going to invade us. They're going to invade Europe. They're going to come after us. And I was reading Balakian's memoir this morning, and I thought, oh my gosh, this sounds like our own times. Balakian talks about how the German government was saying that the Russians are going to invade. They're not going to stop. And this is before the Soviet Union was invented. This is when it was just Russia. And they were saying the Russians are going to invade. They're going to come after us. And do you know why they were saying that? Well, because the Austrians declared war on Serbia, because some Serbian dude shot the Archduke, and they said that all the Serbians are now guilty. All right, they got into this whole thing. They got hysterically deep into this idea of collective punishment. The Austrians did. They declared war on Serbia because, hey, the Serbs should have provided better security for the Archduke, even though the Austrians did not give a shit about the Archduke. Nobody liked the Archduke. They did not give a fat flying fig about the Archduke. But they used the murder of the Archduke to justify war with Serbia, because them Austrians, they want the Balkans. They've always wanted the Balkans. You can go back into history, deep into history, and you can see the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Habsburgs. You know, they were always backing the Albanians. They were backing the Muslims against the Serbs and all that. So a very long history of violence the Austrians do with the Balkans. Very weird. But the Austrians, they said, okay, Serbia, you should have provided better security for our Archduke, even though he was like the black sheep of the family. They declared war on Serbia. They invade Serbia. They butcher hundreds of thousands of Serbian civilians. It's really ugly. Freaking Austrians, they recruited the people who hate the Serbs more than anyone, the Croatians. And they sicked the Croatians on them, and the Croatians raped and pillaged and murdered and did all sorts of sick shit. and they killed hundreds of thousands of Serbs. So while this is happening, while this butchery is happening, Russia is now in a dilemma. The Tsar is in a dilemma. What are we going to do? Are we going to go to war over Serbia? The Tsar says we have to protect our ally. We got to go to war. In comes Rasputin, the crazy, demonically possessed monk who's like into weird sex orgies and shit. Rasputin comes along and he tells the Tsar, if you go to war for Serbia, God is going to curse you. And the Tsar said, I'm sick of this guy's shit. The Tsar says, kill this bastard. And eventually they had Rasputin killed. So Russia goes to war for its ally Serbia. So the Germans are seeing this stuff happening, and they're saying Russia's going to invade. They're going to invade Europe over. They're not just going to stop with Serbia. They're not just going to stop fighting Austria. They're going to invade Europe. Oh my God! Blah blah blah. All this hysteria happened, and Grigoris Balakian says in his memoir that people were whipped up into a frenzy, thinking that the Russians were going to invade Germany. They were going to invade all of Europe, and that hysteria is there. It's in Europe today, and it's not strong to the point where you see what Balakian saw. It's not strong and intense to the point where you're seeing what Balakian saw when he wrote his memoirs of how there were tens of thousands of Germans taking to the streets and they were all just crazy war frenzy. But I think that sort of thing can be seen in the future. I think that could be seen in the future. So again, history doesn't repeat exactly, but it sure as hell rhymes. And there's a parallel. You can always find parallels with the situation of today with situations in the past. You can always find them. Helsinki is promoting various initiatives to strengthen military preparedness among civilians, the envoy said. There is increased media coverage of bomb shelter renovations, the expansion of shooting club networks, and the extension of maximum age for reservists. So they're saying, okay, maximum age. They want to recruit older dudes to fight in war and all this stuff. And it says here that multiple outlets have reported a sharp rise in interest among Finns in weapons training. So that's increasing. They're starting to go to the shooting range more often. Shooting ranges have seen membership soar, and the government has announced plans to open more than 300 new shooting facilities to encourage the trend. So they want more guys with guns. They want to bring the Second Amendment to Finland. In November 2024, Finland issued guidance on how to prepare for an armed conflict, emphasizing the importance of readiness in the face of potential threats. Sweden has sent out millions of updated booklets entitled, quote, "In case of crisis or war," while Norway has issued pamphlets urging people to be prepared to survive on their own for a week in the event of extreme weather, war, or other threats. So you see war frenzy being cultivated in Europe, and I think it's going to grow. I think militarism is going to make a comeback in Europe. I think it's going to come back, and you see it with the rise of the AfD. Everyone thinks the AfD in Germany is a party of peace. Those people are deceived. Go look at the party's ranks. Who's in the ranks of the AfD? It's a bunch of either military veterans and active military personnel. A lot of military guys are in the AfD, and you even have people who were deep in the NATO military apparatus, and they're now in the AfD. The AfD is the party of militarism, and if they take full power, they will bring back militarism to Germany, or at least they will try to do so. So again, we live in some weird-ass, ugly times, and it's only going to get weirder and weirder. So to quote Cypher from The Matrix, buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye. Kansas is going bye-bye, everyone. Civilians should not get involved. It makes them target. This is the reality. This is how all these wars are. All these wars do this sort of shit. All major wars will do this sort of shit, where they're getting civilians, they're training elderly folks how to use AK-47s. I mean, it's just that kind of crazy shit that happens. Did you see Trump pull the chair for beat? Yeah, I saw that. I don't know. Everyone's like, oh, look, he's kissing up. Listen, Trump is a sly guy. He could be just stroking this dude's ego, and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't know. So the Turks are from Mongolia? I mean, I think Turks and Mongolians are related. World War II Germany was meant to play some role today. Ukraine is made to play same role. I don't know. You're saying Germany, Ukraine today is the Third Reich of the past? Ukraine's a pretty weak country in comparison to what the Third Reich was. Theo, what do you think of the Golden Page BB pager? I have no idea. I don't even know what you're talking about, to be honest with you. The Turkic landmass, yes, a big part of former Soviet Union civilians should not get involved, blah, blah, blah. I already read that. In a war, everybody can become targets. I'd rather not die for want of shooting back. Let's see if Zelensky finally wears a suit in the peace talks. Yeah, that'll be hilarious, right? We'll see what's going to happen with all this stuff. America is deciding to stay in its lane now that what is to be done with Ukraine / Russia with regard to NATO. I think that they're going to make the Europeans have a greater responsibility for Ukraine. That's my prediction. Again, I could have egg in my face for the future, but that's my guess. BB gives pager to Trump. Okay, he gave a pager to Trump, but what am I supposed to think about that? I don't know. Is it a pager for what? Like order a pizza? Is it a pager so that they can secretly communicate about sniffing cocaine on a table? I don't know. I have no idea. Every war is a dreadful war, and we leave it to those who are shrewd and calculated to manage it to the end. But we leave it to people who are psychopaths. And the reason why we do that is because only psychopaths are willing to take positions where they have power over life and death. That's just the reality. Good people are not going to take positions of power for war. Good people are not going to run for president. Good people are not going to become the president. You cannot be a good person and become the president of the United States. It's just impossible. You have to be willing to kill people. You have to be willing to do wars in which you know for a fact civilians are going to be butchered. You have to just get involved in things that would make the average person lose sleep. I know for a fact that if I dropped a bomb and I know, and I later found out that that bomb that I dropped killed thousands of people, I would probably go insane, knowing myself. So if you are a general, if you're running a war, if you are the leader of a country that's hardcore militaristic, you're not a good person. People say, well, how come we got all these narcissistic psychopaths running everything? Because those are the only people willing to do the freaking job. That's just the reality. You, me, we're not going to pull the trigger. Like, oh, pull the trigger. Oh, yes, you pull this trigger, you know, a bunch of freaking kids are going to be dead and their mothers are going to be on the floor and fetuses are going to be strewn on the floor because you killed a bunch of pregnant women. Average person can't live with that shit in his mind. You know? It's like that scene from Scarface when he finds out he's about to kill a kid in the car because he finds out they want to kill this journalist, and so he could, okay, so the guy who plays the main character, whatever his name is, Scarface, Antonio, whatever, Mr. Montana, he says, okay, we're going to kill this journalist, yada yada, and then he finds out that there's a kid in the car, and he says, I don't listen. I only come here to kill the journalist. I didn't know there was a kid in the car. Like, oh, you got to do this, Tony. And he's like, I don't know, man. I didn't sign up for this shit. I don't know. I'm not going to have that shit in my conscience. I'm not going to do it. And you watch that scene, and you're thinking, man, this guy who's a freaking criminal, even he's got a little bit of humanity in there somewhere. Reference to the pagers that were blowing up. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh, is that what that is? Oh shit. Never mind. I guess we did crack the code, or you guys did. I didn't. I guess I'm meant for war because I'm indifferent to the idea. Okay, damn. Never mind. Would Poland invade Western Ukraine if the government collapses? Perhaps. Wouldn't be surprised at all. I know that Poland has territorial claims to Western Ukraine, to areas like Lvov, East Galicia. Those areas, Poles consider it to be historically their lands. So yeah, I think that if Poland had the opportunity, they would 100% take it. Must be a hard ass to be president, or for that matter, part of the military and law enforcement. I think being a police officer is very different. As a cop, you have the right to kill someone who is a threat to you and a threat to those around you. And if you kill someone who has a knife and he's going to stab you or he's going to stab someone else, that is not going to be something that's going to affect your conscience. But if you go out and you snipe some old lady and you are told that you did a good thing because she was a terrorist, I think the average person would lose sleep over that and get PTSD.